On November 17, 1974, Sandy Fox sat watching the evening news in absolute disbelief. Looking back at her from the television was the charming and attractive man with whom she had recently shared a brief two-day whirlwind romance. Possessing the same movie star appearance and mischievous smile that had first caught her attention, it was easy to understand how he earned the nickname the press had given him, the Casanova Killer. The person she had known as Paul John Knowles was in truth a ruthless murderer who had taken the lives of as many as 35 innocent men, women, and children during a 5-month rampage that stretched across 6 states. Sandy realized then just how fortunate she truly was to have survived their meeting. Paul John Knowles entered the world in Florida on April 14, 1946, and from an early age he started getting in trouble with the law for minor crimes. When he was caught stealing at only 9 years old, his father had enough and decided he no longer wanted anything to do with the boy. Disowned and placed for adoption, Knowles spent the remainder of his youth shuffling through reform schools and foster homes. Predictably, this did little to lessen his delinquent behavior, and during his teenage years he kept stealing, destroying property, and continually landing himself in trouble with authorities. At age 19, he experienced his first true arrest, and from that point forward, Knowles would spend nearly half of each year locked up for crimes that included burglary and automobile theft. By early 1974, Knowles was serving time in Florida's Rayford prison when he began corresponding with a new pen pal, Angela Kovic. After trading letters for months, Angela became deeply infatuated with him. She traveled all the way from California to Florida to meet him face to face, and soon the pair became engaged. Using her limited savings, she hired an attorney who successfully secured Knowles' parole. Upon release, he quickly flew to San Francisco, where they intended to marry immediately. Yet just days before the ceremony, Angela called it off. She confessed that Knowles gave her an aura of darkness, and that her psychic had warned her about a dangerous new man entering her life. At the time, she didn't realize it, but that decision may have spared her life. Knowles did not react well to the broken engagement. He later boasted that on the night of their split, he murdered 3 people in a fit of rage, though investigators could never verify this claim. What authorities do know, however, is that Knowles returned to Jacksonville, Florida, where he was jailed once again after starting a barroom fight. If only that had been the conclusion to his story. Instead, on July 26, 1974, the seasoned inmate picked the lock on his cell and escaped, setting in motion one of America's bloodiest crime sprees. That same night, after breaking free from a holding cell in Jacksonville, Knowles invaded the home of 65-year-old Alice Curtis. He bound and gagged her while tearing through the house in search of valuables. Tragically, Curtis suffocated on her dentures, becoming his first confirmed victim. Whether or not he intended her death, the incident seemed to awaken something monstrous inside Knowles and unleashed a months-long wave of killings. Knowles lingered inside Curtis's residence for several days, eating her food and watching her television, even with her lifeless body still there. When he saw his own image on the local news, he realized it was time to leave Jacksonville. After stealing Curtis's vehicle, he drove around the city searching for a place to abandon it when he spotted 11-year-old Lillian Anderson and her 7-year-old sister, Millette, walking along the street. Recognizing them as acquaintances of his mother, and fearing they could later identify him, he abducted both children, strangled them, and discarded their bodies in a nearby swamp before fleeing town. Now, with 3 confirmed murders behind him, he knew he had to escape the area quickly. The following day, Knowles reached Atlantic Beach, Florida, where he broke into the home of Marjorie Howe. This time, he wasted no time, strangling her with a nylon stocking before stealing her television set and driving away. Continuing his aimless journey northward, he picked up a hitchhiker and soon strangled the victim as well, raising his confirmed total to 5 in only a few days. Following this murder, Knowles appears to have stayed quiet for a short period, but before long, his violent urges resurfaced and he returned to killing. On August 23, 1974, Knowles strangled Kathy Pierce in Musella, Georgia, using a telephone cord while her 3-year-old son stood by helplessly. Strangely, he spared the boy's life. On September 3, 1974, Knowles encountered businessman William Bates in a Lima, Ohio bar. After several hours of drinking together, he strangled Bates, hid his body in the woods, and stole his cash, credit cards, and vehicle. Bates became Knowles' first confirmed male victim, though his body was not discovered until October. Driving the stolen car, Knowles traveled across the country to Sacramento before circling back east through Utah and Nevada. There, on September 18th, near Ely, Nevada, he murdered campers Emmett and Lois Johnson. 3 days later, he attacked and killed a stranded female motorist, leaving her body tangled within a barbed wire fence. On September 23rd, Knowles crossed paths with beautician Ann Dawson in Birmingham, Alabama. They traveled together for several days until he tired of her companionship and killed her on September 29th, though her body was never recovered. By this point, after murdering at least 10 victims in 5 states, Knowles again went quiet for a short period, but inevitably, the compulsion to kill returned. On October 19th, in Woodford, Virginia, he fatally shot 53-year-old Doris Hovey in her home with her husband's rifle. This time, he neither robbed nor assaulted her. By then, it was clear Knowles was no longer motivated by theft, but by a growing thirst for blood. Not long after Hovey's murder, Knowles picked up 2 hitchhikers he fully intended to kill. However, before he could act, police stopped him for a traffic violation while he was driving a stolen car. Fortunately for Knowles, the officer simply issued a warning and let him go, but the incident shook him. After dropping the hitchhikers, he reached out to a lawyer and admitted his crimes. The attorney urged him to surrender, but Knowles refused. Instead, he reportedly recorded a taped confession and handed it over, instructing the lawyer to release it publicly if he were killed, and to ensure any proceeds from his story went to his mother. Despite this close brush with capture, Knowles was unable to control his urge to murder. On November 6th in Macon, Georgia, he met Carswell Carr, who mistook him for a homeless drifter and invited him to stay the night. Sharing drinks, Knowles stabbed Carr to death and strangled Carr's 15-year-old daughter. After fleeing, he may have also murdered hitchhikers Edward Hilliard and Debbie Griffin, though their remains were never recovered. On November 8th, while bar hopping in Atlanta, Georgia, Knowles met British journalist Sandy Fox. She later admitted she was captivated by his striking looks and his resemblance to actor Robert Redford. The two spent the evening together, though Knowles failed to perform intimately. Over the next 2 days, repeated unsuccessful attempts led them to part ways on November 10th, leaving on seemingly good terms. Fox had no idea how fortunate she was to escape unharmed, but later speculated he spared her because, as a writer, she could spread his story and enhance his fame. The day after leaving Fox, Knowles made a critical error. He attempted to abduct Susan McKenzie, a friend of Fox, and assaulted her at gunpoint. Against all odds, she escaped and notified police. Authorities now had a name tied to the string of mysterious killings. They soon tracked Knowles and pulled him over, but he brandished a sawed-off shotgun and fled. Days afterward, he resurfaced in Florida, where he murdered Beverly Maybe in West Palm Beach, then kidnapped her sister and stole her car. By the next night, he released Maybe unharmed in Fort Pierce, Florida. On November 16, 1974, a Florida state trooper identified the stolen vehicle Knowles was driving and attempted to stop. Ready with a weapon, Knowles took the officer hostage, locked him in the back of the patrol car, and fled in a cruiser. Realizing a stolen police car would draw immediate attention, he used it to pull over an unsuspecting motorist. After abducting the driver, James Meyer, he confined both men to the back of Meyer's car and drove them into Pulaski County, Georgia. There, he handcuffed them to a tree and executed them with point-blank gunshots. Killing a lawman marked the beginning of his downfall. Within hours, Knowles encountered a police roadblock set up to catch him. With no escape, he rammed through, lost control, and crashed into a tree. Wounded, Knowles bolted into the woods, firing at officers in pursuit. Lawmen with helicopters and dogs launched a massive manhunt. Yet his capture came not from them, but from a civilian. On November 17th, 27-year-old Vietnam veteran and hunter David Clark spotted the injured fugitive several miles away from the official search perimeter. Suspicious, Clark cornered him with a shotgun and held him at a nearby home until police arrived, finally ending the murderous rampage. Once in custody, Knowles boasted of killing more than 35 people between July and November of 1974, though investigators could only confirm 18. On November 18th, the day following his arrest, Knowles was being transferred to a high-security prison when he made a desperate grab for the sheriff's revolver. During the scuffle, the weapon discharged, prompting FBI agent Ron Angel to fire 3 point-blank shots, killing Knowles instantly. The Casanova Killer met a violent and sudden end. Even after his death, fascination with his crimes persisted among the public and police alike. His handsome looks, charm, and devilish grin lured in victims and earned him his infamous nickname, Constantly on the move and murdering across 6 states, he made it nearly impossible for investigators to connect the killings. There was no clear victim pattern as he murdered men, women, and children in different ways, by stabbing, strangling, or shooting. Some were robbed, others killed for no reason at all. By the time police realized the murders were linked, it was too late. With his death, Knowles never revealed his motives. His taped confession may have provided insight, but those tapes were reportedly destroyed in a courthouse flood. His attorney claimed never to have listened to them and refused speculation, citing client privilege. Perhaps childhood trauma and abandonment shaped him into a killer, or heartbreak drove him from petty crime into murder. Maybe, instead, he killed for infamy. Sparing journalist Sandy Fox and his opportunistic attacks suggest notoriety was his true motive. Ultimately, however, no one will ever know. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on what's next. See you in the next one.